Our film begins with a tale from long ago, specifically in 1592 in Japan. At that time, many samurai wandered the wilderness after the death of their leader. The fiercest and most ruthless among them was Kuro, a man who would cut a person in half just to test the sharpness of his sword. Because of his tyranny, he wiped out the people of his village, even killing his own son without mercy. At that moment, his sword turned black, reflecting the darkness of Kuro's soul. Realizing the depth of his evil, Kuro decided to end his life with the sword that had claimed thousands of lives. The sword was later placed in the city of Hiroshima as a warning to all humanity that excessive tyranny and cruelty always end in tragedy. In the present day, a boy was playing in a poor neighborhood when he heard a noise nearby. Curious, he went to investigate and found Mr. Smiley, the director of a pharmaceutical company, along with his assistant Fugu and several of his men, unloading a mysterious box from a car. Smiley had instructed them to ensure the box was delivered to him by any means necessary. After completing their task, Smiley ordered his men to kill them all mercilessly so that no one would know about it. However, before they left, Smiley noticed the boy, who had seen and heard everything. He ordered his men to chase the boy and kill him without hesitation. The men began chasing the boy, who tried to escape but tripped and lost consciousness. At that moment, a mysterious masked figure appeared. Before the men could complete their mission, the masked man attacked them with great force. The surprise came when one of the men shot the masked figure in the head, but the bullet had no effect due to the mask he was wearing. Smiley saw one of his men fleeing in terror at the sight of the masked figure, so he decided to retreat, prioritizing the box over any immediate problems. The masked man saved the boy, who wasn't sure if the figure was good or evil. The boy couldn't remember how he ended up there, but he did recall running away from an orphanage. He offered to befriend the masked figure, but the man remained silent and quietly took the boy to the hospital before disappearing. At the same time, Smiley knew that the masked man, named Rendel, had been sabotaging his business for some time, especially after the death of Smiley's grandfather, who had run the company with an iron fist. After his death, the ruthless Smiley took control. Smiley was so brutal that when one of his men fled from Rendel, Smiley brought him back, locked him in a cage in front of everyone, and gathered his men to punish the deserter to death. Smiley's strength and skills were on a different level compared to the helpless man, and he quickly finished him off to the applause of everyone present. It was clear that Smiley's entire crew was mad, enjoying bloodshed and violence just like him. As for Rendel, he lived in a hideout, surrounded by pictures of many people, with Smiley's photo at the top of the list, reminding him of his desire for revenge. He frequently stared at a photo of himself with his wife and daughter, who had been murdered. Rendel remembered when he had uncovered the scandals of Smiley's company, which was producing harmful and dangerous drugs. In retaliation, Smiley had killed his wife and daughter mercilessly. Since then, Rendel had been determined to seek revenge at any cost. Meanwhile, Smiley was working on a dangerous serum. The scientists had asked him to provide someone to test it on. Smiley then appeared at a press conference to address Rendel's attacks on his company, trying to convince the public that Rendel was the real villain and that once his company was destroyed, Rendel would move on to other companies. However, a journalist named Nina insisted that Rendel was targeting only Smiley's company. Smiley dismissed her comments and ended the conference. Later, Smiley met with Fugu to check whether she had managed to open the mysterious box. It turned out that the box contained a complex stone piece that required solving a puzzle to unlock. Smiley ordered Fugu to do everything possible to open the enigmatic stone. It was later revealed that Nina had been investigating Rendel's case for a long time, looking into his past, as she had always been keeping an eye on Smiley and his company. Her colleague gave her a photo of a man named Kuro, who had scammed Smiley some time ago and fled with a lot of money. He informed her that Kuro would be arriving in the city soon. As for Rendel, filled with hatred and the desire for revenge after the death of his family, he trained day and night to build his body and iron will to continue his quest for vengeance. It was clear that he had a lot of money, but he had lost passion for everything else. At that time, Smiley brought in a man who was supposed to work for him and began telling him the story of his grandfather, a man so dangerous that he easily wiped out members of the Yakuza. His grandfather had sought immortality, traveling to America in the hope of achieving this dream through science or any means necessary. After finishing the story, Smiley shocked the man by suffocating him with a plastic bag until he was completely dead. Once the man was dead, Smiley handed the body over to the scientists to test the Immortality serum they had been developing. Indeed, as soon as the serum was injected, the man miraculously came back to life. However, he suddenly began gasping for air as his skin started to melt. At that point, Fugu shot him in the head, putting an end to his suffering. Smiley was furious about the experiment's failure and ordered the scientists to remain in the lab until they corrected the mistake and ensured that the serum had no side effects. Later that night, a suspicious shipment linked to Smiley was being transported. At that moment, the masked vigilante Rendel appeared, attacking them with brutal force, even overturning the large truck and causing significant damage. However, men emerged from the truck and attacked Rendel, one of them stabbing him and knocking him to the ground. But the surprise came when Rendel got back up again, hearing a voice inside urging him to eliminate them all. Suddenly, Rendel transformed into a fierce and deadly female warrior, taking down the gang members one by one. Smiley had been watching everything unfold through the cameras and initially thought he was seeing an illusion. However, he soon realized that Rendel hadn't actually changed and that it was all in his mind. Smiley ordered Fugu to find a way to understand how Rendel had become so powerful and seemingly invincible. He then went on to bribe the police chief to turn the public against Rendel and deflect suspicion from himself. Meanwhile, the conman Kurika arrived in the city. Smiley's men immediately kidnapped him, but Nina, the journalist, witnessed the event and knew what was going on. At the same time, Smiley devised a plan to use the amnesiac child to his advantage, announcing to the press that he had completed the adoption process and that the child would live with him after being released from the hospital. Nina was keeping a close eye on the situation, and before leaving, she met with Rendel. Although Rendel refused to speak to her, she handed him a photo of Kurika and informed him of what she had witnessed, warning him that Smiley's man might kill Kurika. During this time, Smiley conducted a new immortality experiment on Kurika. After ordering the scientists to subject Kurika to a powerful electric shock, killing him, they injected him with the serum. Kurika came back to life once again and appeared completely normal. Smiley was overjoyed, and the scientists informed him that they could finalize the serum's approval in 48 hours. Smiley then decided to bind Kurika with iron and throw him into the sea to ensure his permanent demise. Nina was secretly observing the scene, capturing everything on video. Rendel also arrived at that moment, attempting to attack Smiley, but Smiley was no easy target. He fought back fiercely and knocked Rendel to the ground, coming close to gouging out his eye. However, the sound of approaching police cars forced Smiley to flee the scene. Rendel jumped into the water and managed to rescue Kurika, taking him back to his underground base. When Kurika arrived at Rendel's hideout, he realized that the base was nothing more than a lot of money and physical training equipment. He quickly understood that Rendel was seeking revenge for the murder of his family at Smiley's hands. Kurika then offered to help Rendel by acquiring advanced technology and weapons to assist him in his quest for revenge, as Smiley was not someone to be trifled with easily. Rendel tossed Kurika the money he had requested and even more, allowing Kurika to begin executing his plan. The next day, Nina was trying to convince the police chief to expose Smiley's corruption, but the chief, having received a hefty bribe from Smiley, denied any charges against him. Meanwhile, Kurika had spent a large sum of money to upgrade Rendel's hideout with advanced technology and heavy weapons. However, Rendel left Kurika to meet with Nina, who was investigating a new drug property from Fala Corporation. She discovered that the drug would become highly addictive, and if people didn't take it daily, they would die instantly. At the same time, Smiley went to the child's room to check if he remembered anything, handing him a wooden sword that his grandfather had kept since childhood. Smiley then told the child the story of the legendary sword, Seifuku Tana, owned by Kuro, and how even the Hiroshima bomb didn't destroy the sword. It was the only thing that survived the devastation. Smiley explained that whoever wields this sword would gain immense power, which is why some had hidden it inside a volcanic rock, making it impossible to open. When the child accidentally dropped the wooden sword, Smiley became enraged. At that moment, the child remembered witnessing Smiley and his men killing those who had stolen the volcanic rock. Realizing the child was now in danger, Rendel rushed to his room, but tragically, it was too late. Smiley had mercilessly killed the child to ensure no evidence remained against him. The doctors tried to revive the child, but under the tearful gaze of Rendel, the boy died, leaving Rendel alone once more. Smiley then coldly stepped outside to announce to the media his deep sadness over the incident, while in reality, he was the one responsible for the murder. At that moment, Rendel knew the time had come. He gathered a massive arsenal of ammunition and weapons to prepare for a final confrontation with Smiley. However, Kurika, being more calculated, managed to calm Rendel, advising him to plan the revenge properly. Kurika also wanted to avenge the child's death and the suffering Smiley had caused. Meanwhile, Smiley kept a secret room in his office, where he preserved his grandfather's body in a glass chamber. Smiley had been working on the Immortality Serum to resurrect his grandfather, who was even more wicked and ruthless than Smiley himself. At the same time, Kurika was in full swing, working tirelessly to equip Rendel for the upcoming battle. Nina, on the other hand, was lured by false information to enter Smiley's office at night to steal the files she had been looking for, believing there would be no guards. Simultaneously, Smiley was about to test the Immortality Serum on his grandfather. One of the scientists prepared a sedative injection that could put any being to sleep for an hour, just in case something went wrong. The serum was successfully administered, and the grandfather regained consciousness. Nina decided to attack Smiley's office and seize the opportunity, and Rendel saw her through the security cameras, deciding to help her. At that moment, Kurika brought Rendel a specially designed vehicle adorned with his symbol. The grandfather needed to stay connected to the machines for a period of time to fully regain his strength. If disconnected prematurely, he would die. Smiley was thrilled by his grandfather's return and began talking about the wooden sword he had kept all these years. However, the shock came when the grandfather took the wooden sword and broke it, instructing Smiley to stop clinging to such trivial things. The grandfather was even more malevolent and brutal than Smiley. He asked Smiley about the real sword, raising suspicions about Rendel. The grandfather was determined to continue his legacy of chaos, war, and destruction, being a lover of violence and disorder. At that moment, Nina managed to enter Smiley's office and steal the files. Meanwhile, the grandfather had reached the rock containing the legendary sword. The grandfather began cutting himself with a knife and performed a series of rituals, the only way to open the rock and retrieve the legendary sword. However, he felt very tired from the effort and asked to rest, telling Smiley that it was only a matter of time, as the rock would open on its own after what he had done. At the same time as Nina was on her way out, she accidentally dropped some items, setting off the alarm. Smiley's men were about to surround her, but suddenly, Rendel appeared and started taking them down one by one. However, he ran out of ammunition when he reached the last man, so he told Nina to keep going. Rendel engaged in a fight with the remaining man, but soon realized that another group of men was attacking him. The last man, terrified, ran away, while Rendel continued to fight them relentlessly, using his strength and determination. All attempts to stop Rendel failed, as his determination was stronger than anything else. When Smiley heard about what had happened, he became extremely angry and ordered his guards to be doubled. At that moment, Nina saw Kurika as she was leaving and understood that he was working with Rendel. She confirmed to him that Rendel needed help, especially after Smiley had sent all his men to Rendel's location to take him down. They saw the rock cracking, with a sword about to emerge. Meanwhile, the spirit of the evil warrior had fully taken over Rendel, and he began delivering brutal blows to the men around him, killing them without mercy or hesitation. The men watched as Rendel fought with tremendous strength, but the truth was that the legendary warrior Rendel imagined within himself was giving him this incredible power. Meanwhile, Nina contacted the police chief and informed him of what was happening at Fala Corporation. At the same time, Rendel had come face to face with Fugu, Smiley's assistant. It was clear that Fugu was different from the other henchmen, possessing unique abilities. Rendel tried in every possible way to defeat her, but he failed, as Fugu consistently had the upper hand in the fight. Suddenly, Fugu decided to leave Rendel and walk away. In the meantime, the volcanic rock had completely melted, and the legendary sword of Kuro emerged from it. Smiley, with all his strength, tried to wield the sword, but he too failed. He then entered the room where his grandfather was. At that moment, the grandfather quietly drew his dagger and approached the injured Rendel, intending to kill him. But the grandfather fell victim to his own actions. The life support machines connected to him were disrupted because he had moved too far from them, and he collapsed in front of Rendel. Rendel took the dagger from him, but realized that the grandfather had already died due to the disconnect from the machines. At that moment, Smiley stormed into the room, furious, and managed to inject Rendel with a powerful sedative, causing him to lose consciousness. Smiley decided to try to break the mysterious mask that Rendel wore in order to reveal his true identity, but even a strong saw could not scratch the mask. During this time, Rendel was dreaming of the warrior who lived within him, and it was revealed that she was a figment of his imagination, his daughter's favorite heroine. In the dream, the warrior struck him hard, attempting to take control of him. At that moment, Smiley was shocked to see Rendel moving despite the sedative's effects. The scientists concluded that there might be two personalities somehow living within Rendel's body. Afterward, Smiley succeeded in unlocking the sword, and power began surging through his body from all directions. He then decided to face off against Rendel in a deadly cage match, under the watchful eyes of his remaining men. At the same time, Smiley discovered the truth about Fugu, who turned out to be the granddaughter of the legendary warrior Kuro, the sword's original owner. Fugu had been trying to keep the sword out of the wrong hands because of the immense danger it represented. However, Rendel ignored these warnings and engaged in a fierce battle with Smiley. The warrior spirit took over Rendel once again, allowing him to land several powerful blows on Smiley. The fight was intense, with Rendel skillfully dodging a strike from the sword, but suddenly, Smiley lunged at him and stabbed him, sending him crashing to the ground before the eyes of everyone. At that moment, Rendel was dreaming of the warrior who always blamed him for what happened to his family because of his constant pursuit of exposing Smiley. While he was dreaming, Rendel got up again, determined to fight until his last breath. He began to strike Smiley with tremendous force. Smiley managed to knock him down again and dealt him the final stab in the back. At that moment, the warrior asked Rendel to surrender to death, but Rendel's resolve was of steel, to the point that it gave him invincible strength. Rendel got up again, to everyone's astonishment. Smiley prepared to strike the final blow with the legendary sword towards Rendel's mask, but the impossible was achieved, as the sword broke as soon as it touched Rendel's head. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. Rendel took what was left of the sword and stabbed Smiley in the heart for the last time, causing Smiley to fall dead to the ground. Silence filled the place for a few moments, until one of the men announced that the winner of the fight was Rendel. Fugu then came down and took what was left of the sword to keep it in a safe place and make sure that it would not be used again in a bad way. Then Rendel was asked to escape, and the rest of the men began to pursue him. So the powerful saga ended at this point, waiting for the new parts that will reveal to us how Rendel's unbreakable mask was made, and will Rendel continue his life in his quest for personal revenge, or will he turn into a brave hero facing a new enemy? We will learn about all of this and more in the upcoming parts.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.